Welcome to the Conscious Living Podcast, conversations to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. An uplifting and inspiring series of conversations and talks with your host, Jackie Woodside. We are educating minds, empowering lives, and enlightening souls to create a world where love prevails. In this engaging podcast, we deliver exciting, positive, transformative talks and teachings designed to elevate your life. Now, let's join our host, Jackie Woodside, for this week's session.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Jackie Woodside again, the founder and the host of the Conscious Living Podcast, where we are here to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. I'm so grateful that you're here, excited and enthusiastic to keep learning about how to live life more consciously, how to be more engaged, how to be more awakened and alive. That's my commitment, that we create a world that that people are just lit up and enthusiastic and, yes, as the word goes now, joyful. So I am so excited to be here with each and every one of you. And I'm particularly excited to bring to the Conscious Living Podcast today a local gal who's here in Massachusetts with me. Are you in Massachusetts? I'm assuming because your uncle is that you are. No, you're not. Oh my gosh. All right, let me correct that. I'm going to bring to the podcast someone who is the niece of a dear, dear friend of mine here in Massachusetts. Leilani and I had the opportunity to meet because her Uncle Frank and I have played racquetball together for somewhere around 35 to 40 years. And when he heard about my podcast, he recommended that I bring Leilani on. So Leilani Laumann Lierd, who is a somatic mind-body coach that practices somatic release techniques to release trauma and any healing in where people are feeling stuck. She also works with teams to help people overcome and sustain in life without the impact of burnout, so that as she works with people, they're able to go back into their team environment and bring a much higher level of delivery. And she's also engaged in the work of conscious leadership. So there's a lot there for us to dive into. Leilani, welcome to the Conscious Living Podcast. Anything you want to say about yourself as we get started?
Sure. Thank you so much, Jackie. First and foremost, I really appreciate the opportunity to connect and share. And so thank you for creating this space.
Yeah.
And thank you for bringing your wisdom into bringing more joy into people's lives. So thank you.
Thank you. And so where are you physically located that I just found out you're not here in Mexico? Right.
I'm actually in Mexico. That is where I operate from. Most of my business is online, and I'd also, like you stated, Jackie, am a mind-body coach, and I'm really here to serve, right? So, as my time in corporate America, I faced a lot of that challenges of constant expectations and saying yes and not factoring myself into the equation.
Mm-hmm.
And that overcommitment that comes from holding yourself at a high standard, right? But then not doing the inner work to make that high standard a sustainable option, right? And so then really moving through my own journey. I started this journey mainly because at age 17, I had my first episode of paralysis. And, doctors said that I would never walk again. And also at that time refused to integrate holistic modalities into allopathic wisdom, which was their training, right? So, and from that journey, I really came into a deep relationship of what inflammation is and how it manifests in the mind and the body and the spirit and how it impacts us in real ways that we don't necessarily even think about or have the language to name when we're in it, right?
Well, that you're saying a lot right there. I mean, that's quite fascinating. You said the first time that you were paralyzed, which is quite interesting. So I have to ask, what was the source of your paralysis and how many times did you experience it? And then if you could continue that on to talk about the link between your paralysis and your now understanding and your work around the impact of inflammation on the mind, body, and spirit.
Sure. So my initial paralysis was around suppression of emotional emotions. We'll just leave it at that, right? Not having the space, internalizing this expectation and belief around what perfectionism is, and being in this space of living up and out somebody else's vision for my life, right? And not knowing that I was in a trauma response, right? I just kept pushing myself and myself. And so, I was president in 5 organizations. I was, had 3 jobs in high school. I completed high school, a year ahead of time. And all of these things were expected and celebrated, right? And oftentimes that's what happens also in the corporate world, is that we, to our own detriment, right, we push ourselves to climb the corporate ladder, to receive the accolades of external validation, right, without necessarily doing that in a sustaining way. And I actually have been paralyzed a total of 4 times, all very different initial stimuli, if you will, of what triggered the event. But through all of them, have come to have a very deep understanding about the relationship between our emotions, inflammation, how our organs utilize that stuck emotion or not utilize it, right? And how it then manifests as blocks in our minds, blocks in our bodies, and prevents us from really being able to step into that joyful life that you mentioned at the beginning.
Yeah, Leilani, help me out here. I mean, it's
Sure.
really fascinating, hearing that you've been paralyzed 4 times and now you are not, I'm assuming?
Yeah, each time I have been able to restore my nervous system in full, despite doctors telling me that I would never walk again, despite, they telling me that I would never have usage of my right hand or left hand again.
And
And
was there a medical etiology of your paralysis, or was it more, I guess, what we would call psychosomatic or emotionally related?
the where allopathic medicine landed was that it was somewhere between epilepsy and fibromyalgia. And those medications prescribed for said conditions actually had incredibly negative impacts on my nervous system. Nothing, in that first episode, I was seen by about 15 specialists and went to and received over 100 medications, as they were just trying, literally, like pulling feathers out of their caps to find an explanation that was within medical parameters, right? And ultimately, ultimately the last professional or the last specialist in allopathic medicine that I saw was a rheumatologist who told me that I would need a blood transfusion every 6 months for the rest of my life.
Why?
And because he determined from one of the blood results that I had a rare blood disease, right? And so that was, for him, that was the explanation of the paralysis, and that was how they wanted me to proceed with treatment. And, thankfully, my mom had been on this journey with me, given the fact that I was 17 and under 18. I needed an adult to be present. And thankfully, at that time, she said, "You know what? I think we're going to go see a naturopath. Thank you very much."
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So we did. And with that, we had a significant impact in being able to continue on to university and complete.
So what did the naturopath do, and how did that change things?
Sure. We stripped everything down, literally. I went on an intense amino acid vitamin formula, and I was on the protocol for about 18 months.
Okay.
While
And were
I
you paralyzed that whole time?
So my paralysis actually started to shift pretty significantly within about 6 weeks of working with that naturopath, to the point that I was able to satisfy his protocols to be able to enter into university and just have a distance relationship. And then I obviously made contact with some naturopaths near university that kept a more eye on me, but we were able to maintain a distant relationship before Zoom, way before Zoom was ever into reality. Right.
So they treated you with a vitamin regime, an amino acid vitamin regime.
They did. You got better. Yep. Yep. And a lot of just, that in that episode, yes, that's how the paralysis diminished. Yeah.
In that episode. So it sounds like you had another episode of paralysis after that?
I did. And the 3 subsequent episodes were really triggered by external events, whether they were car accidents or situations similar. And it was really an autoimmune response. Okay. Very much like this psychosomatic response. And in that, there was a lot of physical therapy involved, but it was significantly deeper. Somatic therapy is a lot different than just regular physical therapy. And that's what I needed.
Yeah. Can you talk about that? How is somatic therapy different, and what happens in somatic therapy?
Sure. For me, somatic therapy is a lot about coming into the uncomfortable silence, right? Giving yourself space to unpack and process why and how you act the way you act, and drawing that connection between where it is in the body, right? So let's just take the liver, for example, right? Like the liver, we know, is the organ that stores anger, right? And so we can work specifically in somatic therapy, we can work specifically around the liver to help an individual with processing why there is resentment or frustration, or where did this stuck anger come from, right? At the core of it, anger is not a positive or a negative, it's simply energy, right? And so why is it stuck? And what is the lesson there for us to really come to terms with?
And when you say stuck, you're meaning that there's disease or illness in a certain organ or part of the body.
Yep, correct. And it has lots of different pathologies, right? So anger can be held in the liver, but manifest and it can have an impact across our mind and our body as well, right? It can have an impact in how we think about ourselves, what belief systems, what impacts are happening at the subconscious mind, what's happening at the conscious mind.
And so what do you do in somatic therapy? Is it touch? Is it talk? Is it energy? Is it tapping? I mean, what actually happens?
Sure. For individuals, well, for my own practice, with my own journey and what I share with clients is pretty specific movements that help the body shift its neurological patterning, right? So we get stuck in our operating systems, if you will, and we have to learn how to rewrite the program. So it will differ based on what is really at hand, right?
So you have people do certain body movements. Is that what you're saying? Okay, and how do you decide what body movements they're going to be doing?
Sure. We go through an evaluation process from the onset. And so, a client will identify, what their beliefs are, what their conscious beliefs are, right? What they are consciously coming to a session or a coaching program with, right? And we do an evaluation. We do an evaluation of their physical body. We also do an evaluation of, they have the opportunity to share their past emotional history through like an intake form that involves their not only themselves, but their mother and their father, or their female or male caretakers as children. And so we also factor that in.
Okay. How so? Like what's happening with the female or male caretakers? My son has two moms, so he doesn't have a male caretaker.
Yep.
So, how does that factor into somebody's well-being or to your work with somatic therapy?
Sure. No, it's really about who had the dominant masculine energy in the household and who had the dominant female energy in the household, and identifying within that framework what those belief systems were, right? And what got integrated at a child's level of understanding life, and how those belief systems of our caregivers played out in our life, and whether or not they still resonate, right? So it's really given the space to unpack which are these belief systems that you're operating in yours, or are they ones that you're carrying forward?
Yeah. And then you prescribe body movements to help people let go of or transform those beliefs.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, very, very cool. I've never heard of that before. I mean, I've heard of somatic therapy, but I didn't know it entailed that kind of body movements. Really, really interesting. On another note, I know that you also just published a new book. What's the title again?
It's called She Leads, We Rise.
She Leads, We Rise. What an apropos title for the time that we are living in. It is October of 2024, and we're in a presidential election where there's some possibility that in a few months we'll be saying, Madam President, she leads.
Right.
We rise. How perfect is that? Tell us a little bit about your book, She Leads, We Rise.
Sure. It's a collaboration of with 23 other women from across the world, actually. And the focus of the book is really about each woman sharing a personal obstacle and how she transformed that obstacle into being something that she could positively contribute to society. And so, really speaking to the gifts of lessons, right, of life.
Beautiful, beautiful. So it's women authors speaking of kind of a tragedy to triumph and overcoming story and how they contribute moving
Yep,
forward.
exactly.
What a beautiful inspiration. And it is a
Thank you.
fabulous, fabulous title. I really
Mm,
appreciate that.
thank
So
you.
you take this body of work of, overcoming, how you've overcome your paralysis and you've overcome medical conditions, you help other people do it, and then you help people deal with burnout. I'm curious, Leilani, what do you see as like the major contributors to burnout in the world that we're living in?
At the heart of it, Jackie, is for me is inflammation.
Inflammation,
Mhm.
burnout. Oh, okay, wow. Say more about that. That's really interesting.
Um, because inflammation impacts the clarity in our mind, it impacts how we feel in our body, and it impacts um, how we can choose to show up um, in a team situation, right? Like, what are the triggers when our teammates are, if we're a manager and we have a teammate underperforming, why is that triggering us, right? What's blocking us from having conscious communication in that situation, right? And we can really boil it back to how do we take responsibility in the action that's ours to take, right? Um,
Okay, I'm still, you need to paint a little clearer bridge for me between
sure,
inflammation and burnout.
sure. Okay, so
I mean, so just let me say a little bit more. So when I think about burnout, Leilani, I think about people who overwork, who
yep,
don't take time off, who like
yep,
constantly are wedded to their phone, who
yep,
have difficulty saying no, who get their
right,
self-esteem met through, doing, acknowledgement and producing results, maybe don't have a strong sense of self-care. So that's kind of what I think about. And,
yep.
and I have to say, I've been a coach for 30 years. I've coached a lot of people around the issue of burnout. Never once have I linked the thought of inflammation to burnout. So paint that bridge for me.
Sure. Well, okay. Happily to do so. So all of the things that you've just said, 100% agree with. That is
Okay.
100% what I would also say burnout is. And at the core of that, though, is why is there a misalignment with thought and action in the body, right? Like, why is there? And it's because there is, generally speaking, right? Because what happens when somebody is constantly not tied to their phone? They're not factoring themselves into the equation, right? They're probably then also having some gut issues. They're probably also having some mental clarity issues. They're probably also having some brain fog. They're probably also having irritability, right? And under all of that is inflammation. Because once we bring harmony back to the gut, right, then the irritation in not being able to digest their emotions can also be decreased. Once we bring inflammation into alignment, their joints can also, right, they start to be able to move in their body more freely because the joints are healthier, right? Once once they start to actually factor in time for their own self-care, and recognize and start to think about why they're running on autopilot. Why do they have this attachment to perfectionism? Why, in fact, have they chosen as their defense mechanism or as their coping mechanism high performance, high achievement, right? When we really unpack and look at the why, their why may be related to a specific trauma, right? Their why may be related to something from their past. And when we unpack that impact on their body, right? The presence of that friction has shifted how the brain fires. It shifted how the endocrine system fires. And all of this has an impact on how they show up.
So are you saying you've used the improving the gut? Are you saying that this relates to gut health or emotional health, psychological health? I'm not
All
sure.
of it.
All of it. So do you work with people around gut health also, and diet and nutrition?
I do.
Okay. Okay. Wow. Very holistic.
That's the goal.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And was that your path to recovery and overcoming?
Was.
Yeah.
Was.
Beautiful. Really fascinating. I really like thinking about this leadership, conscious leadership, and She Leads, We Rise. I love that book title from this holistic perspective. I was a therapist for 30 years, Leilani, and understand the psychological paradigm very well.
Right.
I have come to a place in my own development and in my coaching where I don't know. I've seen people spend decades trying to figure out the one why. And I guess I've moved to a place in life where it's like, okay, you can see what the symptoms are. You have a sense of what your past has been and of the beliefs that you've developed. I just wouldn't want people today listening to all of your wisdom be left with like, you got to figure out that one thing. Because if really were to boil it down, the one thing is simply being a human being. Like
100%.
100%.
Yes.
Be a human being. And that comes with a mechanism called the ego, and it comes with a neurological capacity called the negativity bias. All of these things that are designed to keep us alive also inhabit our highest degree of expression and self-expression and success. So it's
100%.
the design flaw of being a human being. So for me, I've come to the place where it's like, okay, you see it. Now, what are you going to do about it? You see that you're overworking. And yes, that's meeting your needs. What else can you do that might meet your needs? How else can you relate to yourself? And, I was that person, I was the first card carrying member of Overachievers Anonymous, 110%. Yes, I have a history of trauma, extensive history of trauma. Is that why I was an overachiever? I don't know. Maybe I was just wired that way. Maybe I'm just, I call myself a high creativity, high intelligence, high consciousness, high vibe person. I think some of us are just kind of on this planet to be the workers. Other people are put on the planet to ride the rides. So what are your thoughts, Leilani, about what I just said about that?
I think it's a beautiful reflection, right? And and I also agree with the fact that you can do too much digging. So it becomes destructive.
As a defense mechanism.
Exactly.
To not do the work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's so funny. I was working with a client, this was a few years ago, and I can't remember what their complaint was, and they're just like, I just wish I knew why I was doing that. And I immediately had this frame, right? That why is probably not the question. I was like,
exactly.
well, that's really interesting. Tell me why. And she went on for a good 5 minutes answering that question. I said, interesting. You just told me why you're doing that. So maybe that's not the issue.
Exactly. We need to ask different questions, right?
Yeah, we need to ask better questions, so I just don't want, and I think that is one of the pitfalls of the psychological paradigm, that you can
100%.
ask why forever and maybe never get your answer. Yeah, it becomes a rabbit hole. Exactly right. So I just want to leave people with that. You probably do know why. If you have a modicum of self-awareness, there's some level, and listen, 30 years as a therapist, hundreds of thousands of hours in the chair listening to people. I'm sure you would concur with this, Leilani. If you boil it all down, people are, I'm worried I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable, and that they're going to find out. And
Exactly.
all our psychological defense mechanisms are about that one thing. It's like, there. We
just did it.
There's your why. You're worried that you're not good enough, that you're not lovable, and somebody's going to find out. Then, therefore, fill in the blank. Therefore, you sleep around with men that aren't good for you. Therefore, you drink too much alcohol to avoid the responsibility of your life. Therefore, you overwork and make hundreds of millions of dollars and still feel incomplete. Like, fill in the blank, but really that's the formula. I'm worried I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable. Somebody's going to find out, and therefore my defense mechanisms get created.
Exactly. And when we know that, right?
Makes life so easy.
It does. Because then it really comes down to, am I going to choose to continue this? Right. Or am I going to choose differently?
Make a different path, make different nutritional choices, make different choices with how I use my body, different choices with how I use my mind and my time. Everything we have is a resource. Your food is a resource, your body's a resource, your mind is a resource. The question is, how are you using, your money is a resource. How are you using the resources that you have? And my goal, and I know it is yours as well, Leilani, is to help people use their resources really consciously.
Exactly.
Yeah, so great. Yeah. So great. Anything you want to leave people with as we wrap up today?
Just an immense amount of gratitude for creating space for this conversation, Jackie. And for listeners, if anybody would like to further connect, they can do so with contacting me at innerexploreryoga.com.
Innerexploreryoga.com. Okay.
Yep.
Beautiful. That's a beautiful website.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love that. Really, really lovely. Yeah, so I'm sure that you will hear from our listeners. I'm so glad. And, do you work with people remotely, or does it have to be in Mexico?
Yep, I do. Most of what I do is online.
On Zoom. Okay.
Yep.
International clientele. Leilani, it's so great to spend time with you. I will see your Uncle Frank tomorrow night on the rep.
Give him a hug for me, please.
I will give him a big hug for you, for sure. And I'm super glad that he made that connection, so we were able to spend some time together. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks so much.